Coming up, the big day is here, Election Day, the day in which the country hangs in the balance. I'll give you my thoughts on this auspicious day. Peter Navarro, former senior official in the Trump administration, has been on the bus and on the plane with Trump. He'll give us a kind of first-hand account of what he's hearing, what he's seeing, how he thinks things are going to come out. Hey, if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
And here we go, guys. Today is the day. And it's a very auspicious day, not just because voting is an auspicious duty and an auspicious responsibility. If you think about our system of government, we, the citizens, are normally removed. We're subtracted from daily decision-making. We can react to it. We can comment on it, but we have no direct control over it. Our control is indirect, and it's over the people who govern us, not just the president, but also the congressmen and senators who are and governors who rule the country in our place and in our name and in our stead. So this is the day where we get to push back, we get to speak back, we get to exercise the levers of control. So there's really no excuse not to vote. There is a second thing I've been thinking about, and that is, I think today is a day that history will look back on as a fateful day, because it is the day that America swung itself around, turned itself around, averted the edge of the precipice. Or it is the day that America kind of recklessly pushed forward and said, all right, well, you know what? We're going to keep going the way we have been going. We're going to continue to recklessly spend money. We're going to import innumerable, almost countless numbers of illegals to swamp the country. We're going to push the world closer and closer to the brink of catastrophic war. We're going to dilute the currency. We're going to continue the undoing, the unwinding, or as Obama would say, the remaking of America. That is nothing more than an unmaking of America. Now, before I talk about the early prospects of this race, Debbie, I noticed today, has decided to wear a very significant outfit and she wants to make a cameo appearance, well, just to come and say hello. So pop in and show people that
I'm not like...
You are not normally... There we go. This is not something you wear every day.
This is not something I wear every day. And it's usually not something I wear in public.
Well, you're always worried about a conference.
I am today.
But
today. And let me fix your socks real quick.
Oh.
They're kind of driving me crazy here.
Yeah, Debbie doesn't realize my socks are actually not on screen, but what happens is when I sit down, my pants kind of start moving up in the style of people who wear those pants for the floods, you know, and then my socks reveal themselves. And typically what I do with my socks is I pull them up, but then I roll them back. So anyway, I'm being given a sartorial makeover here. Well, let's turn to the election. And I was watching Morning Joe make his attempted closing argument for Kamala Harris, and he could do no better than recycle the scandalous falsehood that Trump has called on Liz Cheney to be, quote, fired upon. Now, I in a way don't blame Morning Joe, because he gets his propaganda from a side that puts out these kinds of falsehoods. So here's CNN. They actually have a headline that says that Liz Cheney should be fired upon. And if you put that side by side with what Trump actually said, because think about it, CNN and Morning Joe are implying that Trump wants to put Cheney before a firing squad. But what Trump actually says is, give Liz Cheney a rifle. So stop right there. I mean, if anyone wants to put someone before a firing squad, do you give them a rifle? No. Trump's point was, let's put Liz Cheney on the battlefields that she's always advocating for. She always wants war. War over here, let's bomb over there, let's fight these people over here. And Trump's like, okay, well, you know what? Why don't we arm Liz Cheney, make her a soldier, give her a rifle, let her go fight in some of the wars that she's such a champion of. That's Trump's point. Now, again, you can agree or disagree with this characterization. You can say, no, Cheney isn't really quite the war hawk that, or you can say, well, yes, she is, but nevertheless, it is not right to say that because you advocate for something, the U.S. should get involved over here. Therefore, you personally have to take a rifle and go fight. So there are various ways you could have responded to Trump, but essentially what CNN and Morning Joe are doing is they are knowingly lying. And this has become our media. I think whatever happens in the election today, the big losers are going to be the media, because people now realize that these people are not to be trusted. The one currency that they have is trust. You know, there are certain fields in which trust is just not that critical. I mean, if you get a plumber to come fix your toilet, you don't really have to, quote, trust him. Either your toilet's going to work or it's not, and then you're going to have to call another plumber and don't pay the guy. But there are other professions which rely heavily on trust. Think, for example, about a doctor. Doctor goes, well, we're going to have to take that appendix out, Dinesh. So I'm going to have trust that what he's telling me is true. I might get a second opinion, but if the second doctor says the same thing, okay, well, there goes my appendix, because that's all it takes for me. Two guys in a white coat telling me that. And similarly with the media, if you think about their currency, what is it that they have? They don't really have anything to sell us. They don't have anything. They're not making shoes that we can wear. They're not building our homes. They're giving us information that they want us and need us to trust. If we don't trust it, then we don't need them. I think that is going to be the second wave of the realization. We don't need them. We need media, but we don't need them. All right. Now, let's turn to the early voting, both the mail-in vote, the early vote, people showing up before Election Day, and what we know so far. I record this about the middle of the day, and so we know something about who's showing up, who's not showing up. The signs, it seems, look really good for Trump. The rural voters have seemingly outperformed by a lot. I'm hearing that in suburban areas where Kamala Harris needs people to show up in big numbers, they're not showing up, at least not yet. Things could change. Of course, we're not even halfway through the day. There's a lot of polling left to do. But here's Mark Lauder, who he basically saying, and he's saying this on CNN, the margins just aren't adding up for the Democrats in these battleground states. And if that proves to be true, that will be critical. That will be decisive. We need men to show up. If there are any men listening to this podcast, you haven't voted, that's crazy. You need to do it. And you need to do it because this is not some abstract thing you need to do for the country. You need to do it for yourself, for your pocketbook, for your family, for your future, for your family's future. This is not one that you want to sit out. If we have a 10 million delta, if women outvote men by 10 million votes, and women are leaning Kamala and men are leaning Trump, the male kind of lethargic, stay at home, I got better things to do, could cost us the election. I don't think it's going to. And I just saw Elon Musk put out a statement just about an hour or so ago that the male vote is showing up. So I don't want to suggest that I'm pessimistic at all. I'm not. But we do need people. At the end of the day, it's not just polls. A poll is measuring opinion of people who are at home. And you actually need to convert the polls and the betting markets and all these averages ultimately need to be activated. It's like a scientist we're talking about the formulas, E equals mc square. And this was actually the statement that I remember is, we need to put the fire into the equations. In other words, it's not enough to say that the world came into being because of a bunch of equations. No, equations don't do anything. An equation is merely a statement of a relationship. E equals mc square. But E equals mc square doesn't make anything happen. It's a description of things that do happen. And that is, you have a big bang and a universe comes into being, and you have flying objects and you have gases, and the gases coalesce into stars. And this is kind of what I'm saying about politics, is that a poll is one thing, but poll is only meaningful if the people in that poll actually go out and vote and fill out their ballots if they haven't voted already. I'm encouraged by the Rasmussen reports, our final Sunday afternoon crosstab. This is from just a day ago, or 2 days ago. Trump 49, Harris 46. And the key thing about this is not the swing state vote. This is the vote. So the early indications are very much for Trump. If Trump doesn't need the popular vote to get to the presidency. But if he's able to tie the popular vote, even if he loses the popular vote but comes close, he will almost certainly win. I don't think at this stage it looks like things are going to work out for Kamala Harris, but all of us have anxiety because of what happened in 2022 in Arizona. Somehow the glitches, the tabulators don't work. We all, of course, remember 2020, 2,000 mules. So none of us, I think, are going to relax. And I think, quite honestly, if we get a result, the overwhelming emotion that I'm going to feel is, well, it's a little bit of exhilaration, a little bit of vindication, but I think mostly, and I probably speak for Debbie as well, relief. Like, you know what? It's almost like you have swerved your automobile at the last minute and averted what could be a really bad collision. But of course, as I speak, there's still a possibility of the collision. And I am hoping that I will be able to come here tomorrow. And again, we don't even know if we'll have a final outcome by tomorrow, but I'm hoping I'm going to be able to come here with some very encouraging news. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With 350 academic programs as of June 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight. It's healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number. You're part of a caring community. Forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. So think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today. Take control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh to learn more. See how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. That's shareright.org/Dinesh for healthcare done the right way. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast the one and only Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him a short one anyway. He has a PhD in economics from Harvard University. He's a noted China scholar, a public speaker, award-winning professor emeritus at UC Irvine. He's written a number of books in Trump time, The Coming China Wars. Most recently, Taking Back Trump's America. You can follow him on X, Real P Navarro. His website, peternavarro.com. Peter, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I got a lot of things to ask you about, but let me just start with, here we are, Election Day, the big day,
Sure.
with a lot riding on the outcome. What is your gut telling you about how things are looking for today?
Well, first of all, I spent last couple of weeks doing the Trump bus tour in North Carolina, Georgia, and then Pennsylvania. I was with the boss. It was a great honor to be with President Trump last night. For the last two rallies he'll ever do, in at least the Trump 1.0 rally, we were in Pittsburgh and then flew to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he, for the last three cycles, has always ended his thing. And he was talking till 3 a.m, and we jumped on Trump Force One and didn't get back till 6 a.m. So my point, Dinesh, is that I've got a pretty good feel of where we're at. I do want to amend the resume just quickly because it's relevant. I actually did a book. It's called The New MAGA Deal. It's at newmagadeal.com. or on Amazon, New MAGA Deal, newmagadeal.com. It's Don Jr.'s publishing house. And the reason why it's relevant here is that it's 100 actions in 100 days. There's 37 chapters. About a third of them are written by people who were in the administration. For example, I was with Rick Grinnell last night, where he's taken a very active role in Michigan. He wrote the foreign policy chapter. So if Donald Trump wins today, or whenever they declare it, it's important, Dinesh, that he hits the ground running, and the New MAGA Deal at newmagadeal.com describes it. Now, here's what the chessboard looks like. We should, going into the close of the polls today, run like we're from behind and get everybody we can to the polls. It's a go TV, get out the vote race. And the way things are shaping up, it's going to come down to probably a couple of 100,000 votes spread across probably Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, maybe Georgia. I think that if you just look at what the mood is out there, the closing argument I got from Donald Trump, not from Donald Trump, but rather from the voters, was very simple. America's in trouble. Kamala Harris is responsible for much of that trouble, and Donald Trump can fix the trouble. And if you look at the polling in terms of the America in the wrong direction, I mean, I've never seen it that bad since the days of Jimmy Carter. It's well north of 80%. People just don't think things are going well. I think that we've had enough time now for people to understand that Kamala Harris is Joe Biden in the sense of embracing her policies, particularly on the border and inflation. And the beauty of Donald Trump is he's got a track record. Having said that, I was in Georgia. The way these drivers work when they drive you around, they work for both sides because that's what they do. They're commercial contractors. And I heard stories where Harris would go to black churches or events or whatever, and she'd always have buses or vans to take people to the early voting right thereafter. So we have to assume that the Democrats are doing their job, and they've traditionally and historically done it a lot better than Republicans. So that's an issue. The most frightening thing, Dinesh, the most frightening thing I've ever seen with respect to American democracy, shy of a Mark Zuckerberg Dropbox in Atlanta or Milwaukee, was something I saw while I was on the Trump tour bus. We'd go, like the last week, we were going around what's called the collar counties in Pennsylvania. The ones, Bucks County stuff, the Delray County, Chester County, things like that. They're like the suburban counties where things basically get sorted out in Pennsylvania in a lot of ways. And we pull up to Levittown in Bucks County at about 5 p.m. And there's hundreds of people wrapped around this building. And what's frightening about it is that many of them have been there since 10 a.m. And the line's barely moving. The bureaucrats in charge are telling us, oh, there's printer problems, this, that, and the other thing. But as Steve Bannon likes to say, there's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences. So I'm very, very concerned about voter suppression in red districts. Because a lot of these states, the secretaries of state are controlled by Democrats. And we saw what they did in 2022 in Arizona. So bottom line, top line is we got a heck of a chance of winning this race and doing so decisively. But at the end of the day, it's going to depend on whether the people who were in the Grand Rapids Arena last night till 4 a.m. and didn't get home till 5, get up today and go to the polls and bring 10 people with them like we've been asking. And it's all going to come down, I think, to turnout. We've got enthusiasm. We got troops. I think Bannon did a hell of a job the last couple of years mobilizing at the precinct level, because I'd go from place to place, Dinesh, and there'd be his war room posse there who would organize stuff. But, it's like we got to run scared and behind until the polls close, rippled across this country, because I can't imagine a Harris presidency. These people are just wrong.
Peter, you said a bunch of things, and I want to pick up a couple of threads and dive into them a little bit. The first thing you said very early on, which I think is very poignant, is you said, by and large, that the rallies have come to an end. I mean, this has been such a signature of Trump. People identify with Trump. Many people who have directly been in Trump's presence have only done it by going somewhere to a rally. And I think Trump himself said something to the effect of, we're kind of going to be retiring the rallies per se. In other words, the era of the rallies is now over.
It's his official position, and it's not like they're obsolete or anything. I mean, it's a triumphant retiring. But if he wins, he's going to get on with the business of governing. And if he loses, he's not running in 2028. So here's the thing about the rallies. I was a little disappointed. I was supposed to speak in Pittsburgh, but we were time constrained, so I had to get pulled. But I had a whole discussion of the relevance of the rallies, and so I'll give the talk a little bit here, because the first rally, you had him going down the escalator in June of 2015 with Melania, and there were about 1,500 people there. But the first rally really was in the Phoenix Convention Center a month later. They had about 4,000 people there. And over the course of 3 campaigns, he's had well more than 500 or 600 rallies. And the model, like early on, it was 20 people on a plane. You had 10,000 people in an arena, the deplorables, the MAGA folks, and you had like 20 or 30 of the fake news in the back. And if you look at the evolution of those rallies, you can say a couple of things. I mean, first of all, you can say that the news went from the news to the fake news over those 8 years, because it used to be when the rally started, they had 90% trust, and now they're about as popular as a child molester at a PTA meeting. I mean, it's just nobody trusts what the media puts out. But the significance of the rally is the transformation of the Republican Party from the party of Wall Street and pinstripes to the party of Main Street, with an incredibly diverse rainbow coalition of black, brown, and blue collar workers. You got cowboys in big hats and farmers in big overalls. You have parents who go to PTA meetings in the middle class who are just aghast at all of the woke nonsense in the K through 12s. And that's been the real triumph of Trump's America, of MAGA, Make America Great Again, based on common sense. And the one thing I wanted to say last night in Pittsburgh was to just rub the fake news nose in the whole damn thing, because if the media had never showed up at those rallies, Donald Trump wouldn't have been able to project his message to America and the world. And the media always showed up thinking that they could catch him and saying stupid stuff like, oh, let's secure the border, or, oh, let's slap tariffs on communist China because of cheating. And all that stuff he said that they thought was crazy and that they try to portray as crazy was not only stuff people wanted to hear, Dinesh, but it was stuff people needed to hear because it needed to be said. And that's what was the Trump revolution, and the rallies did it. I mean, yeah, sure, he probably could have done it without the rallies, but it's really the most important political innovation we've ever saw, and nobody's going to be able to replicate that. I mean, you watched him last night. The man, after getting shot in the ear and almost losing his life, and what was great last night on the plane, I actually was able to sit right across from one of those agents, the guy with the wraparound shades who you see in that iconic picture. I mean, after getting shot, Donald Trump's in a state of political grace. He's funny, he's warm, he just tells it like it is, and he's just so genuine. It's not even so much more genuine than Harris. He's just genuine, and she's not. And the rallies, everything's centered around that. He got a little nostalgic there at that last one, because he sees kind of what's going on. And today's Judgment Day for America, as well as his campaign. But wow, Trump rally, never before, never again.
Never to be seen again. Hey, we'll be right back with Peter Navarro. Mike Lindell has a heart of gold. Mike and MyPillow love giving back to those in need. He does this all the time. Recently, he sent a truckload of 14,000 MyPillows to those impacted by hurricanes. But even though he loves to give back, a large retail store just canceled a huge order that had already left the warehouse. And so, besides giving to those in need, Mike wants to pass some big savings directly on to you. For the first time ever, you get the classic standard MyPillow for wholesale prices, just $14.88. And it gets better. For a limited time, the whole classic collection is now at wholesale prices. Get queen-size MyPillows, $18.88. Upgrade to a king for just $1 more. Get the body pillows, $29.88. The multi-use MyPillows, just $9.88. Go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh, or you can call 800-876-0227. Take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever. And on top of that, get free shipping on orders over $75. Prices have never been this low before. Here's the number to call, 800-876-0227, or just go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh. You get the standard MyPillow for just $14.88, the lowest price ever. There are limited quantities at this price, and once they're gone, they're gone. Hey guys, it's election day and we are going into a new era. I'd love to invite you to check out and subscribe to my Locals channel. I post a lot of exclusive content there, including content that's censored on other social media platforms. On Locals, you get Dinesh Unchained, Dinesh Uncensored. You can also interact with me directly. I do a live weekly Q&A every Tuesday. Hey, I'm doing one tonight, election night. No topic is off limits. I've also uploaded some cool films to Locals, documentaries, feature films. 2000 Mules is up there. The film that came out last year, Police State. Of course, you know about the new film, Vindicating Trump. Hey, if you're an annual subscriber, you can stream and watch this movie content for free. It's included with your annual subscription. So check out the channel. It's dinesh.locals.com. I'd love to have you along for this great ride. Again, it's dinesh.locals.com. I'm back with Peter Navarro. His website, peternavarro.com. Follow him on X at RealPNavarro. Peter, you're talking about the. Let's come back to the election for a moment.
Sure.
I think I saw in the New York Times article with their latest poll that there are multiple paths to a Trump victory. There's no state that Trump absolutely has to win. If he loses over here, he can win over there with this combination. But I think the Times was suggesting that for Kamala Harris, the only road to the White House is through winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, all three. That if she doesn't really pull that off, it seems unlikely that she's going to make it. Do you agree with that assessment? Is there another path for Kamala Harris to get to the White House? If you were not describing your preferences, but merely a betting man, who do you think you'd bet on right now if it was just purely a matter of putting the good money on one or the other?
Well, I bet if I had to bet my house and everything I owned, I'd put it on Donald John Trump. But when I say that, and if you're listening to this, you damn well not better sit home because I said it, because it all depends on you. It all depends on the turnout. Now, what worried me early on after she pulled her coup d'etat on Joe Biden was her initial ability to capture more of the African American vote. That was kind of the illusion that was projected early in the polls. And that single switch in the ticket when she stuck the knife in Joe Biden's heart, I don't know if he even felt, because he doesn't feel or think anything today, but when she did that, it brought into play African Americans in a more pronounced way. And what that immediately did was put into play both Georgia and North Carolina, which have more heavily populated African American percentages as part of the population. So if she were to take both Georgia and North Carolina, that gives her a different path, certainly, than having to run the table in the blue wall states. But I spent a lot of time in North Carolina, crisscrossing the state. I reminded people there that North Carolina was the place Bill Clinton first passed NAFTA-SHAFTA in 94 and then let China in the WTO in 2001. And at the time, North Carolina was both the textile and furniture capitals of the world. And it was Clinton and then the Democrats who followed him, who destroyed much of North Carolina's blue-collar manufacturing base, disproportionately hurting African Americans. And Donald Trump brought that very same message, of course, in his rallies. And I didn't get any feel at all that there was support for Kamala Harris. I mean, maybe if you look at it, it's this rural urban kind of thing. Raleigh, there's a section of Raleigh Durham where she runs well, and she runs well with the woke kids and pointy head academics. But up and down that state, I mean, they get it. They get it. So I'm less concerned now about both North Carolina and Georgia. Particularly, I mean, the best campaigner for us in the Black community, besides Donald Trump and his policies, has been Barack Obama. I mean, that was a monumental blunder when this effete Martha's Vineyard Barack Obama comes out and arrogantly lectures strong young Black men, telling them that they need to go vote for a woman who made her living putting young Black men in jail for marijuana. No, tremendous backlash to that. So, you know, I don't see her winning through Georgia and North Carolina, which initially was brought into play.
I mean, it also seems, Peter, that, you know, you gave in a very concise way the closing argument for Trump. Namely, I don't like the way things are running in this country. Who's been running them? Biden and Harris. And so I'm not going to vote for those guys because they've done it to me. Yeah. And Trump is the guy who's going to come in and do something else. Yeah. Now, I don't see an equivalent closing argument for Kamala Harris. I think she's had great difficulty stating that argument in 3 sentences. I mean, if you were advising her, what would your closing argument be? Does she say all the stuff that's been going on? I agree with you. It's terrible, but I didn't do it. It was all Biden, and I'm going to be completely different. I don't see a closing argument even available to her, and she certainly hasn't made one, has she?
Well, I was in Reading, Pennsylvania, which, you know, if you ever played Monopoly, that's the old Reading Railroad. And it's a key part of kind of the old industrial base, Pennsylvania. And I was staying at this country, you know, it's in suites, kind of like in and out kind of thing. And I remember coming down in the morning to grab a little breakfast before heading out on the campaign trail. And there was this big table with about 8 young women there. And they were all Harris people. And everything on their chest was T-shirts about abortion. And that's all she's really got. It kind of made me sad in a way to see these young women where they're so laser focused on that one issue, and they're so deranged by Donald Trump that they don't put their own lives, their own young lives, in the context of being able to raise a family, being able to be safe in their homes from rapists and burglars from Venezuelan gangs, or to be safe from the bombs that may drop on them as a result of Gaza and Ukraine and China and the Taiwan Straits. There's no worldview there. There's only, it seems selfish. They seem like self-absorbed people. And it was sad. There was, you know, like she talks about joy. I saw no joy in these people. And I mean, her closing argument, all she's got is that issue. And I don't think she gets anybody who she wouldn't otherwise have gotten from the woke, liberal, radical, Bernie, lid Pocahontas side, because other people in the party, particularly Blacks and Hispanics, are thinking about the economy and the border crime in the cities and the takeover of this country by woke ideologues and open border people. I'm still, one of the things I joke when I give my speeches out there is that, I'm still looking to find that one person in America who thinks it's a good idea to have men in women's sports. I can't find them. Yet that is like a centrist part of the Democrat Party, and they're stuck with it. Kamala Harris is. So I'll tell you one other thing. There was a good segment on the fake news yesterday about Kamala not revealing how she voted on this proposition out in California. It's a tough on crime proposition. And it's like, wow, you can't even tell us how you voted on that thing? When if you voted against that, it's like the worst American fears about defunding the police and letting folks out, no bail and this, that, and the other thing. So I don't know. She's going to have to make the closing argument. I don't think she's got anything, Dinesh.
I saw this thing this morning, and you'd chuckle if you saw it. It's our friend Jack Posobiec and another guy. They put on these Kamala t-shirts, and there was a line of people waiting for a Kamala rally, and they go down the line and they shout things like, "Hey guys, we're really excited for Kamala. This way we all get to transition our kids. Raise your hand if you want to transition your kids," right? Or "We're really excited because we've all had a lot of abortions. Raise your hand if you're proud of your abortions." And you could just see the line was just sullen and dead silence because these people were ashamed of it, and yet that is, as you say, their platform. They can't really run away from it. They're running on it. And yet this is what they're putting before the American people. Well, I guess we'll see how this is all going to play out, Peter. But thank you so much for the time, guys. I've been talking to Peter Navarro. His website, peternavarro.com. Follow him on X at RealPNavarro.
And Dinesh, don't forget, new MAGA deal, newmagadeal.com. It's the 100 actions in 100 days. If Donald Trump's our new president, you can read the book to figure out what he's going to do.
Well, you know what? I'd like to have you back on in that case to talk more about what's in that book, because we're going to be...
And I got to give you a shout out for that movie, 2000 Mules. It made a hell of a difference. It should have made a lot more if the fake news had actually given the credibility it had. But keep doing what you're doing, Dinesh.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Peter Navarro.
All right, my brother.
We're making our way through my book, The Big Lie, subtitled provocatively, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left. Now, I grant that if someone is not familiar with the argument of this book and they read the subtitle, they'll go, "Man, that's a little extreme. Are you really saying that the American left is shaped by the Nazis, Dinesh?" Actually, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. And I'm going to document it quite systematically. And I'm going to document it by showing all kinds of things that are not known and yet are indisputably right there in the historical record. They have never been challenged. This book has been now out a few years. Not a single person, no historian has come out and said, "Oh, this isn't true. This isn't really part of the historical record." On the contrary, the historians who are familiar with this record know precisely that it is. Now, I was talking about the precursors of this book because I made the point that the territory that the book covers is mostly unmapped. And so it makes me feel like a bit of an explorer, kind of a pioneer, if you will, pushing into territory, kind of clearing the brush. But it's not to say that there weren't some people who put up some early signposts. I mentioned last time the case of Hayek and his book, The Road to Serfdom. Today I want to talk a little bit about Jonah Goldberg's book called Liberal Fascism. Here's Jonah. What we call liberalism, the refurnished edifice of American progressivism, is in fact a descendant and manifestation of fascism. Is a descendant, meaning it derives from, fascism is kind of its ancestor, and manifestation, meaning it continues, modern liberalism, modern progressivism continues to manifest or show, to display features of fascism. Now, Goldberg goes on to say that fascism and communism, far from being opposites, are, quote, closely related historical competitors for the same constituents. What he's getting at here is that fascism and communism appeal to the same kind of person. They were both, weirdly, you could call it social justice movements, egalitarian movements, movements that are coming from the same side of the aisle and appealing to the same kind of people. Goldberg proclaims progressivism, quote, a sister movement of fascism, no less than communism, and he says it displays a, quote, family resemblance that few will admit to recognizing. This term family resemblance is both a colloquial term and a term of art. Term of art is sort of a technical term. So it's a colloquial term in that you can say that if you're looking at a bunch of brothers and sisters, you're like, and even cousins, oh, wow, they have a family resemblance. They sort of look like each other. But this is a term also popularized by the philosopher Wittgenstein, who made the point that he used this term family resemblance to make a wider point about language. And his point was that language doesn't necessarily designate specific things, but rather it tends to find a family resemblance or a kind of likeness in some respects. Remember, a family resemblance is never total. You would never say that a brother and sister look like each other if they were identical twins. Identical twins are essentially carbon copies of each other. When you talk about a family resemblance, you mean that, look, this is coming out of the same pool. Obviously, in the case of actual relatives, the same gene pool. But here we mean coming out of the same ideological pool. Now, Goldberg goes on to talk about how fascism and Nazism came out of the left. But he doesn't say how. He just asserts it. And what I would do in this book is go deeper than that. And I'm going to draw on the work of the leading scholars of fascism in the past, really, 100 years. People like Anthony James Gregor, who was the longtime professor of history at Berkeley, and Renzo Di Felice is the leading Italian scholar of fascism. Zev Sternhell, I believe, is an Israeli scholar, but nevertheless, these are the top names, the top people who have really looked at the kind of original documents of fascism. And I'm going to show how fascism and Nazism came out of a kind of intramural or internecine left-wing debate inside of Marxism and inside of socialism. Basically, the whole problem began when the prophecies of Marxism failed to occur. Now, what this refers to here is Marx was a sort of secular prophet. And by that I mean Marx believed that he was a scientist who was making prophecies based upon scientific certainty. It's kind of like the guy who studied Halley's Comet who goes, I predict that on so-and-so date, Halley's Comet will return. Marx thought he was doing that kind of a thing. In other words, sometimes we think of Marx as someone who was a kind of a Antifa type of BLM type of organizer who's like, let's get all the workers to unite. And Marx did do some of that. But really, Marx, if you pay attention to Marx, none of that was even necessary. Why? Because Marx is basically saying, look, there is a kind of built-in movement in history. There is a clash that is going on between the proletariat or the working class and the bourgeoisie. This will lead to revolution as capitalism reaches a mature phase and is then overthrown by its by the working class, creating a new form of, not only a new form of government, but a new form of man. So Marx was basically saying, there's nothing we have to, quote, do to make this happen. It's going to happen for sure. But it didn't. And not to say that there weren't revolutions. There was a revolution in Russia, but guess what? Russia was not in any sense ripe for socialism, according to Marx. Russia didn't really have a large working class. Russia was essentially made up of semi-illiterate peasants and then an aristocracy. There was not even a developed bourgeoisie, a kind of capitalist class of entrepreneurs and business owners. Those people didn't even really exist in Russia. So Russia was in no way fit the Marxist model at all. And the places that did, Marx thought that the revolution was most likely to come in Germany or in England. It not only didn't occur then in those countries, it has not occurred at all, and there's no sign that it's going to occur. So this was a big crisis in the left. I mean, think of it. It's kind of like, if Jesus had made a bunch of prophecies and none of them came to pass, the Christians would be like, whoa, what do we make of this? Our leader has told us this is going to happen and this is going to happen, and none of it has even happened. So this is the Marxist crisis. So what happened with Marxism is it split into two camps. It split into, on the one hand, the Leninist and Bolshevist camp, which was one way of understanding why the revolution never occurred in the industrialized countries. This was Lenin's interpretation of the situation, and the other became fascism and Nazism. So there were some diehard Marxists who continue to say, well, you know what, let's just keep waiting. It's kind of like, let's keep waiting, and ultimately these Marxist prophecies will come true. But really, once you get 50 years away from Marx, you're now in the 1910s and 19-teens, 100 years ago, basically. It's a little bit ridiculous to keep saying, let's just sit and wait, because Marx had predicted that those things would happen 50 years earlier. And so it was kind of time to move on. And I'm saying that the two types of moving on, one was the Leninist Bolshevist way, and the other was the fascist Nazi way. And notice, by the way, that both those led to not just movements of ideas, but the Bolshevists had an actual government, Russia, Soviet Union. And the fascists and Nazis had actual governments, Italy in the case of fascism and Germany in the case of Nazism. Now, Jonah Goldberg associates the left with fascism, but he doesn't make the equivalent link with Nazism. I think it's because kind of the obvious reason. I think Jonah thought, well, listen, what is Nazism defined by? It's defined by genocide. It's defined by concentration camps. Well, we don't really have genocide or concentration camps on the American left, at least not yet. So I think Jonah thought this is not an analogy. Plus, I think Jonah, who's himself Jewish, was like, I don't really want to go there. I want to preserve, you could call it the singularity of Nazism. Nazism isn't a category of its own. It cannot be equated to anything else. There's a little bit of this kind of exclusivity in discussions of Nazism, particularly in connection with the Holocaust. And I think with the Holocaust, it is justified. But nevertheless, Nazism was an ideological movement. Let's remember the Nazis put out a program, a 20-point detailed program of all the things that they were running on. They ran in multiple elections. Ultimately, of course, they became the largest party in Germany by 1933. This is what propelled Hitler to power. So there's nothing wrong in studying Nazism as an ideology, as a set of ideas. We're not even going to focus on the latter-day stage. We will talk ultimately about concentration camps and death camps, because as it turns out, there is a weird and surreal and disgusting connection between some of the horrors of Nazism. I'm thinking here of like mass sterilization. I'm thinking here of eugenics. I'm thinking here of the idea of useless people who need to be eliminated. As we'll see, all of that is relevant to our story. But the reason I subtitle my book, Exposing the Nazi Roots, not the fascist roots, but the Nazi roots of the American left, is there is an unknown, largely unknown, and quite deep connection. And it's a two-way connection. Sometimes the connection is one way. Like, for example, let's just say that the left in America is inspired by the fascists and the Nazis. They get some of their ideas from the Nazis. But I'm going to show that it's a two-way connection. Yes, the left in America is impressed by the fascists, more the fascists than the Nazis, but in some cases the Nazis. And but the Nazis are also inspired by the left in America, believe it or not. And the Nazis get ideas, important ideas, not peripheral ideas. This is not a case where Hitler just goes something like, well, you know, the Democrats exterminated the American Indians. Good for them. Hitler does actually say something very close to that. But he goes way beyond that. The Nazis are borrowing ideas from the Nuremberg laws right out of the Democratic playbook. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore fascism and Nazism. We're going to look at how those two things, by the way, although similar, are somewhat different. For example, Mussolini was the founder of fascism in a sense. I mean, certainly the first fascist figure to take over a major country, namely Italy. Mussolini never called himself a Nazi. And interestingly, Hitler rarely, if ever, called himself a fascist. So right there you begin to see that fascism and Nazism, although linked, are not quite the same thing. And the people who lived at the time, notably the prototypical fascist Mussolini, the prototypical Nazi Hitler, were very conscious of the differences between the two. In the end, Nazi Germany was allied with fascist Italy in World War II, but I'm going to show that there are interesting differences between those two, and yet there are profound connections with the American left with both. The American left is connected to fascism. The American left is connected also to Nazism.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.